You're as human as your idiot father. Let me out of here!
There's nothing more toxic or deadly than a human child.
You know, I always wondered why villains in kids' movies try to take over the world. Like that time Dr. Doofenshmirtz built a giant magnet to steal loose change. Talk about a penny-pinching plan. But hey, who am I to judge? Today we're digging into what makes a villain memorable beyond just world domination. We're ranking every Paramount villain, from the world conquerors to the lunch money stealers. Stick around to see who's actually worthy of the title supervillain. And let me tell you, some of these baddies are more bark than bite when it comes to their evil schemes. Alright, let's talk about Megatron. You know, the big bad robot who's supposed to be this unstoppable force of evil. Yeah, well, let's just say he's not quite living up to the hype. So picture this, it's 2007 and Michael Bay decides to bring giant robots back to the big screen. Megatron's our main villain, and he's got all the makings of a real threat. He's massive, he's got an army of Decepticons, and he can turn into a freaking gun. Pretty intimidating, right? Now, I'll give credit where it's due. Megatron does have some pretty cool moments. Remember when we found out he literally froze himself just to get to Earth? That's some serious commitment to the cause. And I'll admit, when he does manage to land a hit, it's usually pretty epic. Despite these flashes of brilliance, his plans quickly unravel when it's time for action. For all his posturing and evil schemes, Megatron seems to struggle against a teenager and his loyal Camaro. It's like watching a cat play with a mouse, except the mouse is supposed to be this terrifying tyrant. And let's talk about his strategies for a second. He's always going on about conquering Earth and destroying humanity, but his plans seem to boil down to smash things and hope for the best. Come on, man. You're supposed to be this tactical genius. Where's the clever scheming? Where's the manipulation? It's like he skipped Evil Overlord 101. I will place Megatron in B tier, and the reason is this guy refuses to stay dead. Blown up, he comes back. Frozen, still alive. Decapitated, no problem. He's basically the Michael Myers of robots, except instead of a knife, he's got a whole alien warship. Alright, let's switch gears and talk about a villain that'll make you wish for the good old days of predictable evil plans. How would you outsmart an enemy that can literally become anyone you trust? Enter the T-1000, the shape-shifting nightmare from Terminator 2. This isn't your average I'll be back kind of threat. It's a liquid metal assassin with a serious attitude problem. Imagine being chased by a puddle that wants you dead. Yeah, it's that weird. Now you might be thinking, come on, how scary can a blob of metal be? Well, let me paint you a picture. You're running for your life, and this thing just casually strolls through a steel door like it's a beaded curtain. It flows after you with this creepy calm that says, I've got all the time in the world, and you're gonna die tired. But here's the real kicker. The T-1000 doesn't just want to kill you, it wants to become you. It's like identity theft cranked up to 11. One minute you're hugging your mom, the next you're getting stabbed by her evil metal doppelganger. Now talk about family issues. And let's not forget the special effects. When this thing hit the screens, it was like someone had beamed tech from the future into our movie theaters. People's minds were blown. It was so revolutionary, it basically changed how we do movies forever. I will place T-1000 in A tier, and the reason is, he's a liquid metal nightmare with zero emotions. He walks through fire, shrugs off bullets, and can shapeshift into your worst nightmare. If he were your substitute teacher, you'd never get away with talking in class. Alright, let's take a deep dive into the microscopic world of Plankton, the pint-sized pest of Bikini Bottom. Now you might be thinking, how can a single-celled organism be a real threat? Well, let me tell you, this little green menace packs a punch that's inversely proportional to his size. First off, Plankton's entire villainous career revolves around stealing the Krabby Patty secret formula. Talk about a one-track mind, right? But here's the kicker. Despite his tiny stature, Plankton's got a brain bigger than most of Bikini Bottom combined. This guy's a certified evil genius. He's the mastermind behind countless schemes, each one more ridiculous than the last. Remember the time he tried to steal Santa's sleigh? Or when he posed as Gary the Snail? The creativity is almost admirable. If it wasn't so misguided, even the tiniest villain needs a brilliant sidekick to amplify his schemes. Enter Karen, Plankton's computer wife. She's the brains behind the operation, always ready with a snarky comment or a half-baked plan. It's like if Siri decided to go rogue and help you take over the world. Now, you'd think with all this evil genius and computer backup, Plankton would be unstoppable, but nope, he's about as successful as a chocolate teapot. This guy's been stepped on, squished, and outsmarted by a sponge who lives in a pineapple. Let that sink in for a moment. I will place Plankton in B tier, and the reason is he's a tiny old genius with a 0% success rate. He builds doomsday devices just to steal a burger recipe, but if he just opened a food truck instead, he'd probably be filthy rich. Alright, let's talk about everyone's favorite Christmas killjoy, the Grinch. This fuzzy green grump has been trying to ruin the holiday since 1957, and honestly, can we blame him? I mean, have you seen Whoville? It's like someone took every tacky Christmas decoration ever made and threw them in a blender. So here's the deal with our not-so-jolly green giant. He lives on top of Mount Crumpet, all alone except for his loyal dog Max. Think of him as a reclusive mastermind, plotting his holiday heists from his icy fortress. I bet his Wi-Fi signal is amazing up there. But then he goes and tries to steal Christmas, like the whole thing. Presents, decorations, even the roast beast. It's a pretty bold move. You've got to give him that. Most villains are content with world domination, but the Grinch, he's aiming for holiday domination. Here's where things get weird though. Have you ever really looked at the Who's down in Whoville? They're always singing and smiling and just happy all the time. It's kind of creepy, right? Maybe the Grinch isn't trying to steal Christmas. Maybe he's trying to save us from some kind of weird Who cult. Just saying, it's a theory. I will place the Grinch in E tier, and the reason is he's more of a grumpy hoarder than a true villain. He steals Christmas, terrorizes a whole town, and lives in a garbage heap. But let's be real, he's just one therapy session away from being a decent guy. Alright, let's talk about Colonel Quaritch, the guy who took Blue Man Group way too literally. This dude's like a walking recruitment poster for the Space Marines, minus the whole respecting alien cultures thing. Quaritch is the kind of guy who'd see a rainbow and try to punch it for being too colorful. Now, you might think Quaritch is just another meathead with a gun, but he's actually got some brains to go with those biceps. He's smart enough to come up with some pretty clever strategies for taking down the Na'vi. Too bad all that intelligence doesn't help him see the bigger picture on Pandora. Speaking of which, Quaritch has a serious case of tunnel vision. He's so focused on completing his mission that he completely misses the point of this amazing world. It's like he's walking through the most incredible art gallery with his eyes closed, complaining about the lack of pretty, but let's give credit where it's due. Quaritch is one tough cookie. This guy takes more hits than a punching bag at a heavyweight gym and keeps on ticking. He's got more scars than a cat lady's furniture, each one probably from killing something with his bare hands. And don't even get me started on his fashion sense. Who wears camo to a planet where everything glows in the dark? It's like he's trying to hide from a rave while cosplaying as the world's angriest bodybuilder. I will place Colonel Quaritch in C tier, and the reason is he wakes up every morning and chooses violence. He's so obsessed with destroying Pandora that he literally comes back as a blue alien to try again. Someone get this guy a vacation. Picture this, a giant crab in a suit scuttling around the office barking orders. That's Henry J. Waternoose III, the big cheese at Monsters Inc. He's the guy who puts the scare in hostile work environment and runs a company that literally powers itself on children's screams. Talk about an unconventional energy source. Now, Waternoose isn't your run-of-the-mill heartless CEO. He actually cares about his company and employees. But here's where things get twisted. He cares so much about keeping Monsters Inc. afloat that he's willing to do some pretty messed up stuff, like say kidnapping human children. Yeah, that kind of messed up. You've got to give credit where it's due though. Waternoose has style for days. I mean, how many villains can rock a mustache and multiple legs at the same time? It's like he's trying to win a Mr. Multitasking Monster pageant or something. For all his business smarts, Waternoose makes a classic bad guy blunder, trusting the wrong monster. He puts his faith in Randall Boggs, a sneaky chameleon with a chip on his shoulder and a scream extractor up his sleeve. Not exactly employee of the month material if you ask me. I will place Henry J. Waternoose in B tier, and the reason is he's a CEO who took profit over people way too literally. Instead of just laying off workers, he kidnaps kids to harvest their screams. If Monsters Inc. had HR, he'd have so many lawsuits. Alright, let's dive into the world of Syndrome, the guy who took fanboying to a whole new level of crazy. Remember when you were a kid and dreamed of being a superhero? Well, this dude actually tried to make it happen, and boy did it backfire spectacularly. Syndrome, formerly known as Buddy Pine, started out as Mr. Incredible's biggest fan, but when he got rejected, he didn't just sulk. He went full supervillain. Fast forward a few years, and our boy Buddy's transformed himself into a high-tech menace. He's like that kid who never got the gold star he craved, so he decided to steal the whole sticker book. You've gotta hand it to him though. The guy's got brains. He managed to invent all sorts of cool gadgets, including rocket boots that would make Iron Man jealous. But here's the kicker. Syndrome's not just smart, he's crafty. His whole plan revolves around creating problems just so he can solve them. It's like if a firefighter went around starting fires just to put them out and look like a hero. What really sets Syndrome apart is his motivation. He's not after world domination or unlimited power. Nope, this guy just wants recognition. His gadgets pack a serious punch, and his plans are actually pretty well thought out. But underneath all that tech and intellect is a desperate fanboy who never grew up. He managed to take out a bunch of real superheroes, which is no small feat, ranking him pretty high on the villain scale. But in the end, Syndrome's just a cautionary tale about what happens when you can't let go of your childhood dreams. I will place Syndrome in B tier, and the reason is he's the ultimate redacted fanboy turned villain story. The dude committed superhero genocide just because Mr. Incredible ignored him once. That's petty revenge on a whole new level. Alright, let's talk about the Hood, the so-called villain from Thunderbirds Are Go. You'd think with a name like that, he'd be striking fear into the hearts of, well, anyone. But nope, this guy's about as threatening as a puppy in a Halloween costume. So what's the Hood's grand master plan? Stealing the Thunderbirds' tech? I mean, come on, buddy. There are easier ways to make a quick buck. Maybe try the lottery or start a YouTube channel. But no, he's gotta go after the high-tech stuff guarded by a family of super skilled rescuers. Talk about picking the wrong target. Now, to be fair, the Hood's got some tricks up his sleeve. He can do mind control and rock some pretty convincing disguises. That's cool, right? Well, it would be if he actually used them effectively. But watching the Hood try to pull off a scheme is like watching a comedy of errors unfold in real time. And get this, the guy's got a secret base inside a volcano. That's some prime villain real estate right there. I bet the view is killer and the air's thick with sulfur and steam. But even with this awesome lair, the Hood just can't seem to catch a break. It's like he's got all the tools but forgot to read the instruction manual. You know who the Hood reminds me of? Wile E. Coyote, always chasing after something he's never gonna catch, with plans that backfire spectacularly. But at least the Coyote's antics are funny. The Hood, he's just, well, kind of pathetic. I will place the Hood in E tier, and the reason is he's your standard evil mastermind with mind powers villain. Sure, he wants to take over the world, but honestly, he's got major discount Bond villain energy. If he had better branding, he could at least be a C tier villain. Alright, let's talk about Davy Jones, the tentacled terror of the Seven Seas. For a guy with an octopus face, he's surprisingly charming, if you're into that whole cursed immortal pirate look. But here's the thing about Davy Jones, he's got layers, like a really sad, really slimy onion. Picture this, you're sailing along, minding your own business, when suddenly a barnacle-covered ship bursts out of the water. At the helm, a dude with tentacles for a beard. That's Davy Jones, making an entrance that'd put most rock stars to shame. But don't let the tentacles fool you. This guy's got some serious skills. He can teleport, walk through solid objects, and even summon the Kraken. Talk about employee benefits, right? Now, Davy Jones isn't just some monster who woke up one day and decided to terrorize sailors. He's got a backstory that'll make you reach for the tissues. He fell in love with the sea goddess Calypso, but she wasn't exactly faithful. So what does our boy Davy do? He cuts out his own heart and locks it in a chest. Talk about commitment issues. You might think that'd make him a cold-hearted villain, but that's where you'd be wrong. Despite all his bluster and bravado, Davy Jones is still capable of feeling love. It's just buried under layers of bitterness, betrayal, and barnacles. And let's be real, who hasn't felt a little bitter after a bad breakup? Davy Jones just took it to the extreme. I will place Davy Jones in A tier, and the reason is, he's a squid-faced pirate with a literal monster army. He owns people's souls, plays a haunted organ, and casually destroys ships for fun. If he started a heavy metal band, he'd be legendary. Alright, let's shift gears from tentacles to ectoplasm, because our next villain takes villainy to a whole new plane of existence. Ever wondered what happens when you mix a billionaire's ambition with spectral abilities? Well, Vlad Plasmius is about to show us, and trust me, it's not pretty. So who is this Vlad Plasmius guy? Picture a businessman who got zapped by a ghost portal and decided being half dead was a great career move. This dude's got more issues than a comic book store, and he's not afraid to use his powers to make everyone else miserable. Vlad's got some sweet ghost abilities. invisibility, possession, duplication, but instead of using them for good, he's all about personal gain. Like that time he used his powers to sabotage Danny's dad at a college reunion. Talk about holding a grudge. Here's where things get really weird. Vlad's got this creepy obsession with Maddie Fenton, Danny's mom. I mean, come on, dude. There are dating apps for a reason. But no, Vlad's idea of romance involves elaborate schemes and ghost powers. It's like he's playing 4D chess while everyone else is just trying to survive high school. And let's not forget Vlad's day job as mayor of Amity Park. You'd think being a successful businessman and politician would be enough. But nope, he's always cooking up some plan to get more power or money, usually at the expense of the town he's supposed to be running. I will place Vlad Plasmius in C tier, and the reason is he's an evil ghost billionaire who never moved on from high school drama. He's been beefing with a teenager for decades, and that level of petty dedication is honestly impressive. Alright, let's take a deep dive into the trench. These guys are like the ocean's answer to a really bad mood swing. You know how sometimes you wake up on the wrong side of the bed? Well, these fellas woke up on the wrong side of the evolutionary chart. Now I get it, you're probably thinking, come on, they're just fish. How scary can they be? But trust me, these aren't your average guppies. The trench are what happens when Mother Nature decides to skip the whole survival of the fittest thing and goes straight for survival of the bitiest. Picture this, you're swimming along, minding your own business, when suddenly you're surrounded by a swarm of creatures that look like they were designed by a committee of horror movie directors. They've got razor-sharp teeth, glowing eyes, and attitudes that make great white sharks look like therapy animals. When the ocean turns hostile, these creatures redefine terror in every ripple. Their entire game plan is pretty much to bite anything that moves, which isn't exactly a foolproof strategy for world domination, but what they lack in brains, they more than make up for in pure, unadulterated terror. When these guys show up, it's like someone cranked the nope dial up to 11, creating some seriously intense moments that'll make you think twice about dipping your toes in the ocean. I will place the trench in D tier, and the reason is they're basically underwater xenomorphs that eat everything in sight. They're terrifying, sure, but they have no actual plan. If they figured out how to take over the ocean, they'd probably be A tier. Alright, let's crack open the case of King Goobot 5. This guy's basically what happens when you give an intergalactic omelet delusions of grandeur. I mean, come on, he's the ruler of a race called the Yolkians. Now, Goobot's grand plan involves kidnapping all the adults in Retroville to sacrifice them to his god, Poltra, because nothing says I'm a serious threat like worshipping a cosmic chicken, right? But here's where it gets interesting. He actually manages to pull off the kidnapping. All the grown-ups in town snatched up in one fell swoop. But for an alien overlord, Goobot's not exactly playing with a full deck. He gets outsmarted by Jimmy Neutron, a kid whose head is shaped like an ice cream cone. That's like losing a chess match to a goldfish. It's almost impressive how spectacularly he fails. And let's talk about his minions for a second. The Yolkians are essentially walking, talking eggs. Not exactly the kind of army that strikes fear into the hearts of their enemies, is it? When your evil plan can be foiled by a bunch of kids and their homemade rocket ship, you might want to reconsider your career choices. I will place King Goobot 5 in E tier, and the reason is he's a giant talking egg who loses to a 10-year-old scientist. He has an army of yolk-powered minions, but let's be honest, if Jimmy wasn't a genius, Goobot probably would have won by accident. Alright, we've made it through the Rogues' gallery of Paramount's baddies. From tiny troublemakers to cosmic threats, we've seen it all. But what really makes a villain stick with us? It's like they're the spice in our movie-watching stew. Too bland and you forget them. Too overpowering and it ruins the whole dish. Remember Khan's ruthless intellect or the Borg Queen's creepy charisma? These baddies left their mark, so next time you're watching, pay attention to what makes the villains tick. Who's your top pick for most memorable Paramount villain? Drop your rankings in the comments and let's get a debate going. Just keep it friendly. We don't need any real-life supervillains popping up, alright?